Good afternoon, delegates and colleagues. Penal Reform International is proud to be co-sponsoring this event on a topic that requires further attention within the human rights system. We welcome the Office of the High Commissioner's report tabled at this Council session on this topic as an important contribution to discussions happening in Vienna on international drug control. We are at a moment where there are opportunities to ensure drug policies are more in line with human rights, and we are in dire need of this human rights perspective. As on the one hand, there is no evidence that harsh drug policies under the so-called war on drugs has deterred production, trafficking or use of drugs, human rights violations are increasingly reported. Today I want to share some insights and views about the impact of drug policies on human rights, specifically in the area of administration of justice. The starting point is that drug policies are filling prisons and overloading criminal justice systems. Prisons are filled with minor drug offenders where they languish in overcrowded conditions due to disproportionate harsh sentencing regimes. Fair trial rights are frequently flouted. Women who are desperate and vulnerable find themselves in prison for minor drug offences, ripping their families apart. Thousands of people are held in compulsory drug detention facilities or centres, often with no avenues to contest their detention. Many countries that remain dedicated to such a punitive approach are witnessing the serious consequences, including the spread of infectious diseases, ever-increasing prison populations, and discrimination against minorities and indigenous populations. Such approaches have also seen the unwavering application of punitive criminal sanctions, with little differentiation between use and possession of drugs at one end of the scale, and large-scale trafficking with links to organised crime at the other end. This has given rise to a dramatic increase in the number of people disproportionately criminalised for small-scale drug offences. In fact, according to available UN data, 83% of drug offences recorded by law enforcement and criminal justice systems are possession offences. And to give some examples of the extremities, in one country, solution traces in a used needle can lead to an 18-month prison sentence. In another state, even a positive drug urine test can send someone to prison. We also see there are thousands of low-level drug offenders imprisoned for life with no chance of parole as a result of three strikes laws, where offenders with no history of violence may face mandatory minimum sentences in excess of 25 years. Such sentencing regimes are in clear breach of the principle of proportionality. This principle requires a range of available sentencing options, and that prison sentences are imposed only when no other sanction would be proportionate to the seriousness of the offence and the nature of its commission, taking into account any aggravating or mitigating factors. There are, however, some positive examples where reforms seek to meet the principle of proportionality and thus protecting the human rights of those who usually come from the most vulnerable corners of society. Norway and Colombia, for example, are decriminalising the use of drugs. Ghana and Tunisia are replacing prison terms with monetary fines. Community service is envisaged in Senegal, and other countries have gone even further, such as Ecuador, where drug couriers were amnestied and thousands of prisoners were released. Even Malaysia and Iran, who have traditionally adopted harsh stances to drugs, are reviewing their death penalty policies, removing people from death row. These countries have realised that their harsh policies were not working, and there is a more effective, more human rights compliant approach to take. It was against this backdrop that the GA special session met and adopted the outcome document. And while the UNGAS outcome document fell short of expectations on many fronts, our overall assessment is that it represents a key milestone in the international debate on drug control. And for the first time, there was a recognition of the relevance of human rights and of system-wide coherence. In fact, it represents the first high-level UN drug policy document to include a full section on human rights. Specifically in the area of administration of justice, Member States have committed to implementing measures to protect human rights, including by ensuring that sentencing for drug-related offences is proportionate, using alternatives to conviction and punishment, protecting legal guarantees and due process safeguards in criminal justice proceedings, and addressing the impact of drug policies on gender and women equality. To conclude, Penal Reform International believes that contribution by the human rights system to the design and implementation of drug policies is critical, and therefore should contribute their expertise to the debates ongoing, including in Vienna. Furthermore, assistance to Member States in implementation of the human rights commitments in the UNGAS outcome document should also be given. Thank you all for your time, and I wish you a fruitful discussion today.